Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Princeton, where in our open and welcoming community, we live our message of hope, love, justice, and joy. If you're visiting this morning, we're very happy that you've joined us for worship, and we extend an invitation to all of our different programs and ministries and events. Please stop by the welcome table after worship so that we can add you to our e-list and let you know what's going on here at UU Princeton. And there's always a lot going on here at UU Princeton. There are 2 programs after worship for everyone to choose from this morning. There's a Unitarian Universalist History program as part of our March membership series. That's from 11:45 to 12:45 in the Murray Room. Or everyone is welcome to stay for a reading and workshop on the book Mindful Race, Building Literacy, Fluency, and Agility. The author of that book, Dr. Natalie Edmond, is here and will be leading that workshop as well as offering the sermon in today's service. Dr. Edmond is a clinical psychologist, yoga teacher, author, and anti-racism educator who is also a member of the UU Church in Washington Crossing. So we're so thrilled and honored to have you here this morning, Natalie. Thank you for joining us. And a heads up, we frequently have multiple great programs happening here on Sunday, but if you're not sure whether to attend the history one or the Mindful Race program, attend the Mindful Race one this morning. I say that as the person leading the UU history one. We did one of those in November and we'll do one again in May. So if you're wondering which one to go to Mindful Race and come back to the history one in May. We may even do a longer workshop over the summer sometime. We have a few other announcements this morning. The first is that next week is the Promo Committee Potlucky St. Patty's Day Brunch. That's a mouthful. You can visit the Sign Up Genius on our homepage if you can bring a dish and or help out to make it all come together. This is a fellowship brunch. You'll eat good homemade food, you'll make friends, and have a great time. And proceeds will help our promo team spread our message of hope, love, justice, and joy beyond our walls. Again, that's brunch next week, right after the worship service. Also, the 2025 fellowship auction and party last week was a fabulous success, and you can still be a winner. There are a few auction items that are mostly experiences. There are things you do with other people, make friends, get to know folks. You can take a look at the paper sheets out there in Robinson Lounge today and see what's available, or email Louise Sr. through the church office to place a bid on the items. Altogether, the auction so far has brought in over $25,500. So thank you all very much for your generosity. And one of our great outreach events, we partner with Washington Crossing is the annual meal in Trenton that we provide as part of Loaves and Fishes. That is at the end of this month. So we'll need helpers on Friday afternoon and early evening on March 28th here at UU Princeton and over at Washington Crossing, as well as on Saturday morning to serve the meal. Louise is coordinating that as well. She's very busy these days. So after you sign up for an auction item, talk to Louise about how you can help be a part of our Loaves and Fishes outreach with the good folks over at Washington Crossing. And our annual stewardship drive is up and running. We're grateful to everyone who has already made a generous financial pledge for the upcoming church year. Everything that we offer one another in the world is created by our combined pledges. So thank you for supporting our community, our message, and our mission. To share a little bit about our stewardship life this morning, let us welcome longtime member and former stewardship leader, Tom Pruscia.
Good morning. My name is Tom Pruscia. I've been a member of UUCP since 2000. My wife and I thought we joined UUCP for our kids, who at that time were very young. Or at least that's what we told ourselves. But as it turned out, my wife and I were quickly drawn into the UUCP community. We loved the Sunday services. We taught RE classes for more than a decade. We got involved in this truly crazy, insane thing called the Spring Fair. We got to know you, our fellow congregants. And we decided, you people see the world like we see the world. Thank you. It's nice not to feel alone. When Elizabeth Silverman asked me to give a stewardship talk, I hesitated to say yes. Stewardship talks are always tricky. I'm pretty sure most folks would rather have to sit through an old-fashioned fire and brimstone lecture on God's wrath than having to hear me talk about money. Sorry, I have no judgment and eternal damnation for you this morning. After thinking, I decided to tell to you a bit about our stewardship path. The operative word is path. Like many things in life, our financial commitment to UCP has evolved, grown, and deepened. For my household, stewardship was a struggle between two powerful forces. On the one hand, there's the scarcity mindset. Every March, when the annual pledge card arrived in the mail, it would sit unopened on the kitchen counter. We'd open up PSE and G bills. We'd open up our health reimbursement expenses, but that pledge card envelope would sit. We didn't want to deal with the insecurity of how much we should pledge. I often thought it would be easier if UCP just sent us a bill, told us what to give. As I understand it, that's an approach many other religions use. Of course, edicts from the altar are not the UU way. Each of us must decide for ourselves. That's the UU way. While that approach works wonder for many things, it can make our congregation's finances quite precarious. On the other hand, there was our growing sense that UUCP, or more broadly our faith, was a critically important part of our lives. We loved being part of UU Princeton. We loved the community. We loved the people. We didn't want to turn our back on that. Yet, as our bond grew stronger, the scarcity mindset sowed doubt and fear. There was always something happening in our life that would allow us to focus on what we don't have. Not enough money, not enough time, not enough emotional support. The scarcity mindset led us to turn inwards. Turning inward made us feel safe, at least for a while. But here's the deal. Turning inward didn't ease our fears. Turning inward didn't bring deep comfort. Turning inward didn't shield me from crazy, mean-spirited people making policy. What did ease our minds was spending time here at UUCP with our fellow congregants. Pondering life with this congregation is the counterbalance to the scarcity mindset. How much better is my life because of UUCP? How much better is your life thanks to your participation at UUCP? UUCP feeds us, educates us, helps us grow, allows us to cry together, allows us to better the world, helps us stand up to injustices. And we need each other more now than ever before. In my experience, embracing the congregation is the kryptonite to the scarcity mindset. The scarcity mindset leads to guilt. Shed the guilt. Embrace your values. I recall one year, our former minister, Forrest Gilmore, spoke about how his stewardship contributions enlivened him. He saw how his financial support was another reflection of his commitment to the organization. And I'll be honest, when I was sitting out there, I didn't believe him that day. However, over the years, I've begun to understand his wisdom. I want my support to be consistent with my beliefs. When you ponder your stewardship card, which may be sitting on your kitchen counter, I urge you not to succumb to the scarcity mindset. It's the boogeyman hiding in the closet. Instead, ask how much better you are because this place exists. UUCP is easily our largest financial contribution we make each year. We do it because this place and you people are vital. Finally, act sooner rather than later. You'll feel good. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We kindle our chalice in honor of the spark in each of us, as a symbol of that ineffable pulse that courses within, making each of us who we are. with our unique gifts, struggles, and dreams. Combined, our individual sparks create a larger flame, one that can grow larger still, as we welcome and partner with others in a shared commitment to hope, love, justice, and joy.
And let us join together in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of life and love, though your beauty and peace surround us and are within us, we also move through days of fear. We move through a world that is broken. We move through a time of division and pain. Remind us of the good who are doing good and place us in their company. Not that we might avoid the difficult work that calls to us, but that we might do it with others of shared commitment. That we will not be alone. That we might be stronger and more courageous, more hopeful and more resilient, and hold a larger vision than we alone can imagine. Lead us not to break as we are broken, but to heal as we are healing. That our lives may bless and build the good in neighbor and stranger and all the generations to come. And here in the silence, we offer these, the prayers and meditations of our hearts. And may these lights of love be with us always. Amen. This morning's reading was selected by Dr. Edmond. It'll be read in 3 voices, and it's titled Co-Sensing with Radical Tenderness by Danny D'Amelia and Vanessa Andriotti, who are with the Gesturing Toward Decolonial Futures Collective. It's found in the book Hospicing Modernity, Facing Humanity's Wrongs and Implications for Social Activism, written in 2021 by Vanessa Mercado de Oliveira. The language has been slightly edited for use in worship, and it describes in a litany-like way what it means to experience life and the world with what the authors call radical tenderness. Radical tenderness. It begins, co-sense with radical tenderness and accept its invitation to be present. Tune in with the collective body, both human and non-human. Take note of all the skins and places we inhabit, the bones and lands that bear our weight. Feel your entanglement with everything, including the ugly, the broken, and the messed up. Relate beyond desires for coherence, purity, and perfection. Co-sense with radical tenderness and dance beyond the loop of identification and disidentification, beyond what you like and dislike. Stop trying to shape reality according to narcissistic compulsions for pleasure, comfort, and convenience. Interrupt addictions to consumption, not only of stuff, but also of knowledge, experiences, and relationships. Let go of possessions, of possessiveness. Renounce fantasies of comprehension, consensus, and control. Disarm, declutter, and decenter yourself. Integrate with a wider metabolism, with a much longer temporality than your human body. Follow non-normative and non-linear time. Deactivate your cravings for protagonism, greatness, and legacy. Stop fearing fear, uncertainty, and emptiness. Be open to the gifts of disillusionment and dissolution. Surrender without collapsing.
Co-sense with radical tenderness and make space for the unknown and the unknowable in ourselves and in others. Seek sensefulness rather than meaningfulness. Allow your state of wonder to stay open without always trapping it into meaning. Don't hold being hostage to knowing. Engage with creativity beyond the intellect. Recover exiled capacities, expand sensibilities, and disimmunize intimacies. Notice the ways in which our thoughts and emotions are bi-physical processes. Listen to non-human authorities and care about our relationship with them. Be open to what you can't and may never understand. Don't cast upon everything a blanket of interpretation. Silence the noises preventing you from digging deeper and relating wider. Co-sense with radical tenderness and be receptive to the teachings of your shadows. Mourn your illusions, compost your waste, ferment yourself. Learn from repeated mistakes. Make only new ones in the future. Discover a whole bus of different creatures inside yourself. Look into the mirror and release the fear of disappointment, rejection, and abandonment. Face your complicity in violence and disinvest from arrogance, superiority, and status. Let go of the fear of being less, the pressure of being more, and the need for validation. Offer the gifts of your failures. We all mess up. We all cry. Deactivate your expectations for belonging and focus on unlearning the logic of separability. Embrace yourself as both cute and pathetic. Be courageously vulnerable.
Co-sense with radical tenderness and make room for new forms of coexistence to encounter you. Renounce unrestricted autonomy in the obsession with form. Find stability in the rhythm beneath the movement. Activate the sense of hearing in all parts of your body so that through witnessing we can heal one another. Listen to unuttered wisdom, nurturing intrinsic rather than productive value. Remember that our medicines are both indispensable and insufficient. Let us have each other's backs rather than back each other up. Tune in rather than empathize with. There's a difference. Notice how you move between your comfort, stretch, and panic zones. Increase care in proportion to risk. Do it with humility, generosity, and reverence. Dissolve the limits and weight of your body, allowing others to move through, with, and for you. Co-sense with radical tenderness and turn the heart into a verb. Look at painful and difficult things with the love of really wanting to see. Feel the pain of the earth piercing you. Understand that the earth is not an extension of our bodies, it's the other way around. Collectivize your heart so that it breaks open and not apart. Let it hold all the pain of and in the world, without being numbed or overwhelmed. Witness being in several layers, me and you, me in you, us and neither me nor you. Forget being either or, be both and more, and moving. Tend the wounds created when the skin holding one body stretches and tears in order to receive and be reconfigured by another. Condition your intellectual, political, and affective muscles for facing storms and running marathons in tortuous terrains. Allow yourself to be guided by a metabolic intelligence. Enable neurogenesis and learn to breathe water. be water. Co-sense with radical tenderness and practice engaged detachment. Offer palliative care to the dystopian world that is dying, both within and around us. Digest the teachings this death offers. Co-sense with radical tenderness and assist with the birth of something new, without suffocating what is being born with projections and idealizations. Co-sense with radical tenderness and invoke and evoke in a double and simultaneous movement, the manifestation of a political practice of healing and well-being beyond what human intelligence can fathom. Allow it to come through you, forever changeable and fluid. Good morning. Good morning. I am the daughter of two Haitian immigrants. They came to Brooklyn, New York in the 1960s and 1970s. They taught me the importance of family, working hard, keeping your head down and not making a lot of waves unless absolutely necessary. I think liberation for my parents was integration. To achieve the American dream, to have financial and governmental stability, provide for their kids, send money back to Haiti and family members, travel, live in a nice home. They passed that messaging down to me, and I became a psychologist 22 years ago. I was the first member of my family to earn a doctoral degree. I'm so grateful for all their sacrifices and the strategies they used to survive xenophobia and racism. Safety and assimilation aren't enough for me anymore. With every year, I claim and embody a little bit more liberation. Liberation theology started in Latin and South America in the 1960s via Roman Catholicism to address the oppression of the poor. Black liberation theology focuses on Africans in general and African Americans more specifically. The focus is on being liberated from all forms of bondage and injustice, whether real or perceived, whether social, political, economic, or religious. I was at the Ewing grocery store early Friday morning. That grocery store has a different vibe than some other grocery stores I go to. We moved there to Ewing in 2021 from Pennington because part of my family's liberation story was to have our kids grow up where they were one of many Black people, rather than one of the only. There's a different vibe in Black spaces or spaces where whiteness is decentered. There's a different vibe in wealthy spaces versus middle class versus working class spaces. I was in self-checkout and this older Black man, I say older, probably just a few years older than me, he approaches me to ask if I'm a doctor. I'm a little shocked because I'm here in my workout clothes, just coming from the class, and I say, I'm not a medical doctor. And he says, oh, what kind of doctor? I say, I'm a psychology doctor. And then he asks me if I have a card, as he wants to see someone. I tell him I'm not taking any new clients, and he starts talking to me about how late in life he has learned that the mind is the most important thing. He says our freedom is in our mind. He says every day he wakes up and he tells himself that because the world wants you to believe so many other things. And I thought, wow, I'm going to channel you into my sermon. The Association of Black Psychologists was created in 1968 with the purpose of liberating Black minds. These Black psychologists walked out of the annual psychological conference that year and decided to start something different, something that focused on Black mental health and liberation. They wanted to break up with a paradigm that used Eurocentric white principles to define the health for Black people. I feel that liberation is a non-linear path, full of paradoxes and contradictions, progression and retreat, letting go of comfort and safety for a time. Here are some foundation principles that I use to anchor myself. I often come back to the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. That pain is inevitable, the suffering is optional, that we have to let go of our attachments and our ego, and that there is a path to liberation. I also ground myself in the Ubuntu philosophy. I am only because we are. And of course, the principles of Unitarian Universalism, where I was first introduced to it in the fall of 2006 when we joined the UU Church of Washington Crossing. I'm reminded of the inherent worth and dignity of every person and every being. That we strive for justice, equity, and compassion. We accept one another and encourage spiritual development. There is our own individual search for truth and meaning, and respect for the independent web of all existence. I think of justice work as a spiritual practice. When I go into dialogues across difference, I try to incorporate mind, body, and spirit. I remember those first two services in 2006. One was related to supporting the legal right for same-sex marriage. Remember when that wasn't legal? And the other one was related to All Souls Day and honoring those we have lost. It brought tears to my eyes, and I felt a spiritual connection in a religious space that I had not felt in a long time. I remember the hard conversations we had in 2018 when we passed the eighth principle. I was so proud that we were one of the first congregations to do that, and that allowed me to stay in that predominantly white liberal congregation. Last year, I remember hearing a conversation between Resma Menachem and Lamarat Owens, two Black men, and here are some of the nuggets that stayed with me. If you do not understand that I'm trying to get free, you're going to misunderstand my entire life. I'm either going to trigger you or inspire you. Does your emotional safety mean I need to be deferential to you? A checklist of what to do is not enough to build an anti-racist embodied culture and life. Racial trauma goes deep and across generations. What we define as culture or personality can be the legacy of collective trauma. I don't have to like everyone, but I can love everyone. That's liberation and remembering that we're all connected. If I don't love you, then it's probably hard for me to fully love myself. Last week I had breakfast with a friend I hadn't seen in a couple of years. His name's Gilbert, and he's one of those friends who I might not see very often, but when we get together, we can talk for hours. I so appreciate the diversity of Blackness that came up in that conversation. I was telling about the highs, my book coming out, and the lows of 2024, particularly the painful backlash I experienced at the end of 2025 after an anti-racism talk. He asked me, do you consider yourself a Malcolm or a Martin? That was a tough question for me. So I asked him clarifying questions. Do you mean younger Malcolm or Malcolm near the end of his life? In the end, I couldn't really choose because I feel like they were each working for Black liberation and the liberation of all beings, just centering Black life, struggles, and stories. And they had different strategies for accomplishing that. Perhaps one believed that the system could be reformed and was an integrationist. And another thought it was better for Black people to divest from whiteness and focus on Black nationalism. Both were vilified by mainstream culture while they were alive. And there's still a tension in many minoritized communities who struggle with the continuum of integration and abolition. So Gilbert talked about the ways after the 1960s civil rights movement, it seemed like Black people as a collective took their feet off the gas. They stopped aggressively pushing for change. We seemed to settle for a little bit of integration. I told him how I noticed in recent years I have moved from liberal to progressive. I see how the whole system, both major parties, are filled with racism and oppression. It's just that one is more obvious about it. He asked me, what keeps you from being one of those extremists? I said, I think the difference is my curiosity, my desire for collective liberation, and my being able to hear the other perspective. I'm rooting for everyone at the end of the day. There's an African proverb on the Association of Black Psychologists website. It says, until the lion tells his side of the story, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. Ruth Wilson Gilmore talks about anti-Blackness being vulnerability to premature death. We can expand that to think about all the policies that cause groups of people to be vulnerable to premature death. I invite you to think who is vulnerable to premature death with current policies being supported. The Black Panther movement of the 1960s, viewed as radical, a group to be feared, terrorists, and many of its members on the FBI watch list were fighting for 10 things that would improve the quality of life for Black people. So what was their 10-point program in 1966? As I read to you, I invite you to think about what is unfinished and how much we've accomplished. 1, we want freedom. We want power to determine the destiny of our Black community. We believe that Black people will not be free until we are able to determine our destiny. We want full employment for our people. We want an end to the robbery by the capitalists of our Black community. We believe that this racist government has robbed us, and now we are demanding that the overdue debt of 40 acres and 2 mules that was promised over 100 years ago would be some level of restitution for the slave labor and mass murder of Black people. We want decent housing fit for the shelter of human beings. We want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present-day society. We want all Black men to be exempt from military service because we believe that Black people should not be forced to fight in the military service to defend a racist government that does not protect us. We will not fight and kill other people of color in the world who, like Black people, are being victimized by the white racist government of America. We will protect ourselves from the force and violence of the racist police and the racist military by whatever means necessary. 7, we want an immediate end to police brutality and the murder of Black people. 8, we want freedom for all Black men held in federal, state, county, and city prisons and jails because they have not received a fair and impartial trial. 9, we want all Black people, when brought to trial, to be tried in a court by a jury of their peer group or people from their Black communities as defined by the Constitution. And 10, we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. So take all that in. Many of these demands were stated again in the Black Lives Matter movement of this century. So back to this question of Martin or Malcolm. I look to melanated feminine voices of different generations, such as Harriet Tubman, Ida B. Wells, Angela Davis, Adrienne Marie Brown, and Vanessa Mercado de Oliveira. I look towards abolition. So what is abolition? Patrisse Cullors, one of the co-founders of the Black Lives Matter movement, describes it as 10 things. Courageous conversations. Learning to respond versus react. Owning that nothing is fixed. Saying yes to imagination. Learn to forgive actively, not passively. Allow yourself to feel. Commit to not harming or abusing others. Practice accountability. Embrace non-reformist reform. Build community. Value interpersonal relationships and fight the US state rather than make it stronger. In one of the mindfulness chapters in my book, I invite people to think of different liberation slogans. And what do you notice arises for you when you hear them? Here are the 3 that I offer, but there are so many out there. Black Lives Matter. Make America Great Again. Free Palestine. Likely, you don't love all 3 of them. When I think of liberation slogans, it's like an invitation to imagination. Where is their curiosity about some of these slogans? And where is their fear or maybe disgust? Which ones do you wholeheartedly support? Where do you find yourself going into a binary? What happens when we center one group? What happens when that group already has institutional power? And always has. I remember in 2020 and 2021, when we were centering Black Lives Matter as a country, that people didn't like me talking about white supremacy culture. And I would often respond digitally, "I wish you well." I even wrote a blog called "I wish you well even when you don't wish me well." I've had to return to that phrase in recent months. When I was in the intense phase of a backlash in November and December, being deluged with messages in almost every inbox that I couldn't metabolize because it felt so violent. I remember talking to a Black Muslim woman who asked me, "What are you most scared of?" It took a moment to reflect as that really cut through all the noise. I answered, "I'm scared about the way that my character is being maligned. And I'm also scared of being fired." Once I said it out loud, there was a freedom that began to emerge. I could start to address those 2 problems. I could start to find some agency. I could address my concerns about financial security and address the suffering I was creating inside of myself, related to the disconnect between who I know myself to be and how I was being portrayed. I had seen the ways activists who were pro-Palestinian liberation were treated and canceled. What if I lost it all? Would I be okay? Could I be okay? And this little voice inside of me started to say, yes, you could be okay. As someone who tends to hide my pain and keep things private, it was a new muscle I was flexing to let others support me. Support came in expected and unexpected places. I remember posting in my primarily Black entrepreneur group about the hate I was receiving for amplifying Palestinian perspective and liberation. I was calling the backlash a digital lynching. And then these were some of the comments that helped to steady me from that group. Being a professional warrior is not for the weak. Sounds like you're living out what it means to be a disruptor. Thank you for standing in the gap. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for your commitment. Based on their responses, it's clearly work that needs to be done. Sending you the biggest hug. I'm so proud of you. I love when you show up unapologetically. I believe when we are rising up to a new level, warfares show up in different ways. We'll be here to support, and I will absolutely be praying for God's protection. In the face of this foolishness, keep showing up as you. Lean into your village and in your community, and allow us to love on you and provide safe spaces for you. I'm so proud of you for doing what needs to be done in spite of. And if you want us to ride at dawn, I'm here for that too. This is disgustingly expected. I'm sorry this is happening to you. You're empowering others and disrupting the norm. We are disruptors, and a lot of folks aren't ready. In spite of the crazy, job well done. Rest in that you did the right thing. And you are a warrior on a battlefield that not everyone is called to step into. Warriors are automatic targets. The attacks you're facing, as painful and exhausting as they are not a sign that you're in the wrong place. They're confirmation that you're walking in your purpose and preparing to level up. Fighting against oppression has never meant to be easy. But God has equipped you for this very battle. He's given you the strength, the voice, and the resolve to stand where others would crumble. Though it doesn't feel good right now, remember this. The hard times you're going through are not meant to break you. They're preparing you for greater. Every challenge, every moment of resistance is strengthening you for the next level. Evaluation doesn't come without a test, and this is yours. Hold fast to your purpose. Hold fast and know that God is with you, guiding you and using even these nasty trials to shape you into the change maker you're destined to be. Keep fighting, keep standing, and trust the victory will be coming in his perfect time. I'm so proud of you that you showed up in front of 900, stood, and delivered. Someone else who had been at the conference and had actually helped to introduce me, one day randomly sent me a quote from a book called Fix Injustice, Not Kids. If everybody likes you, you aren't doing anti-racism hard enough. It's important as equity leaders that we have to learn how to interpret blowback as evidence, that we're building something real, doing something more than rearranging disparities. That's the philosophical end of it. The practical end of it, as we alluded to, is that blowback can be exhausting. It can threaten our job security or even our physical safety. Let's be real, when we enact transformative equity, the blowback is coming. The question is not, will there be blowback? The questions are when and in what form and for how long and how viciously. So the biggest takeaways from that time is I can feel sorry for the pain I caused and triggered a minoritized group while holding true to the anti-racism belief that fights for collective liberation and the end to genocide and other oppressive behaviors. I can keep fighting to abolish anti-Semitism as well as disrupt and extinguish anti-Arab racism. I cannot apologize for wanting everyone to be free and amplifying the perspective that is often not covered by mainstream media. My task was to build anti-fragility, as Nassim Nicholas writes about. I needed to build my capacity to not be liked and for my words and slides to be taken out of context. I had to give up on trying to talk to people who only can hear one truth. I can continue to practice nonviolence in my mind and out loud and in action. My mindfulness practice and anti-racism muscle building has been preparing me for this time. The question is, how do I find its safety inside of myself? No matter what I was feeling, I had to remember this is the cost of trying to be an accomplice. And whatever I was feeling, it couldn't compare to what Palestinians are experiencing daily. It's a low-intensity struggle, as my favorite book from last year, Hospicing Modernity, says, compared to a high-intensity struggle. I had to find progressive allies, people who were more radical than I am, right? I needed some Malcolms in my corner who are unapologetic in their beliefs. No need to make myself small while also making sure to protect myself, because the misogynoir is intense. The empire doesn't relinquish its power easily. I share these comments as you may need that kind of support one day if you're trying to be a disruptor to any kind of oppression. You may also be able to provide it to someone who is being a disruptor and needs that extra support. Nonfiction books and webinars give me lots of comfort. I often think about, why am I so committed to Palestinian liberation when there are so many people suffering in this world? I think partly because of the way that the United States is financially supporting so many oppressive policies abroad. I see the long legacy of imperialism, colonialism, and anti-Blackness in the ways Palestinians and their allies are treated. It triggers a deep ancestral sadness and rage within me. If one people can be dehumanized and discarded, any one of us can be. It comes back to Black Lives Matter again, and the importance of centering the most marginalized in the system. Omar El-Akkad, an Egyptian-Canadian novelist, recently wrote the book, "One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This." Yes, that's it. How will the future write about this time? Are you awake? How are you contributing or opting out? How are you finding your voice? Being radical is relative. What I considered radical 10 years ago is different than 5 years ago, is different than 5 months ago. I think the veil has been lifted around colonialism, white supremacy. We haven't made enough progress as we keep recreating oppressive systems. Thoughts and prayers aren't going to get us free. The disillusionment is part of the liberation. Liberation doesn't always feel good. It isn't always sexy. It's painful to be awake in this time. I've been reading all these books about colonialism and anti-racism this year. I think I've read like 26 books so far this year because I want to stay effectively connected to the pain. Your pain needs you, Saeed Jones says in Alive at the End of the World. A good reminder that being connected to pain can be liberatory. There is strength in community. That pain can be debilitating and lead to despair, and it also can mobilize us into action. As the guy at the grocery store says, liberation starts in the mind. I came into this year telling myself, I'm okay. You're okay. It's going to be okay. Let's make gentle our word for this year. How can I move through the world a little bit more gently? Is there another way that I can do this thing I desire, but more gently? It's an interesting dialectic to show up more unapologetically and yet more gentle. As I moved through January and found myself not quite feeling like myself, I described it as feeling untethered. I didn't have any big goals, which is strange for me. I didn't feel connected to my life in the same way with the same drive. There wasn't really a lot of to-do lists going on, and that was actually scary. I found myself feeling scared to speak in places I once did, still feeling tender from the trauma of backlash. I'm starting to realize that my feeling untethered is a form of liberation. Maybe this is non-attachment. It is hospicing some things that no longer serve me while making room for something new. The in-between place is hard for me. Do I believe that the system can be reformed and true racial integration can happen? I'm not sure. I have the violent embodied experience of disillusionment. It is one thing to give a talk that agitates some people, and another thing to live a life that hospices modernity. I keep coming back to that book. I like using hospicing as a verb, as the author talks about. We're living in modernity. It holds beauty and horror. The advances of technology have brought wonderful things and also eroded our environment and communities. What if we were to hospice old ways of doing things? We can nonviolently let things go as it reaches the end of its life or usefulness. I remember when I would hold on to things tightly. I needed to control so much of my life. I would get so excited about the many things I was involved in. I was probably overscheduled and overly productive. Whenever I was bored, I would find ways to bring excitement into my life with a new project or responsibility. I didn't know how to rest for long periods of time or just live in a good enough space. I want to still have a meaningful life. I never want to go into apathy. I want to still feel deeply and fight for justice. My pain needs me. I can sit with my rage, sadness, grief, and boredom. I can rest more. I can just be. I'm trying to convince myself of that. Maybe liberation is the way I decide to parent, letting go of the hustle culture. Just being a guide for my kids, really letting them be who they are going to be, even when the little voice inside of me starts to chatter about all the anti-Blackness they will experience in this world. I want them to live full lives that are meaningful to them. Maybe it's in the way that I lead, with quiet grace, transparency, and imagination, decolonizing therapy, centering self-care and relationship, and justice comes first. Maybe that means showing up unapologetically, even if that means I will experience misogynoir and be misunderstood. Maybe that means breaking up with diet culture and loving my aging body that supports me in doing so many wonderful things. Exercising simply for the way it makes me feel, and not tracking steps or workouts. No need to continue to accomplish big things or continue building my resume. Maybe I've done enough, built enough of a legacy. Maybe that means challenging heteronormative, Eurocentric ideas of what it means to mother teenagers as a working mom. Maybe helping others in my circle of influence be a little braver, build their literacy, fluency, and agility. Make little adjustments to hospice modernity. Continue to befriend rage and sadness. Let them accompany me on my journey and guide where my bus travels. Maybe that means sitting in understimulation and boredom more of the time. And just focus on being a good ancestor. Maybe this is embracing minimalism and hospicing capitalism, supporting small businesses, especially racially minoritized businesses. Maybe it means using more active language and hospicing passive language that condones violence. Owning words like digital lynching, ethnic cleansing, apartheid, white settler colonialism, white supremacy, anti-Blackness, oppression, violence, genocide, misogynoir. Hold people accountable for being complicit in violent systems. Challenge symptoms and find compassion for people who have a different orientation to the world and are not ready to break away from the empire. Divesting from racial capitalism and other aspects of modernity doesn't happen all at once. Maybe it's a little bit every day or week or month, so it can be integrated into your whole life. I don't know what comes next, and I'm here for it. I've learned that when you're trying to disrupt the system and the people who protect the systems of oppression there can be hard days and moments. Last month, I bought myself a new band for my watch. It's the colors from the Pan-African Unity flag, red, black, and green. Red is for the bloodshed and pain endured. Green is for the gifts and resources in the African diaspora. And black is for the diversity of Blackness. It is a physical reminder of my elders and ancestors and siblings across the globe, past, present, and future. I'm never alone, even when my mind tells me that. We're all interconnected. My love of Blackness sets me free. And liberation is in the mind, the body, and the spirit. May you sprinkle kindness wherever you may travel. Thank you for being on this journey with me. Ashe. Ashe.
And at the end of our hour, we extinguish our chalice, knowing that its light carries us until we gather again. Go forth grateful for the moments before you, the breath within you, the people among you, and the Spirit leading you toward lives of love and kindness. And go forth knowing that you are held always and always with everyone else by that great love of no beginning and never ending. Go in peace, and amen.